I froze in the hallway. I wasn't supposed to be home for another 3 hours. The presentation at work had finished early, and I thought I'd surprise her with takeout from her favorite restaurant. Instead, I was the one surprised. To freedom, I heard her whisper to someone, and to finally getting what's rightfully mine. A deep male voice responded with a chuckle. He has no idea what's coming. I silently stepped back, my heart pounding against my ribcage. The folder I was holding, containing the financial report I'd been working on all month, slipped from my fingers. 10 years of marriage, and this was what it had come to. Hushed conversations in my own kitchen with a stranger. For weeks, I'd noticed the signs but dismissed them as paranoia. The late-night texts she'd quickly hide when I entered the room. The mysterious weekend work emergencies that kept popping up. The sudden password changes on her phone and laptop. The way she'd pull away when I tried to touch her. That night, I waited until she fell asleep before carefully taking her phone. She'd changed the password again, but I knew her patterns. On the third attempt, I was in. What I found made my blood run cold. Hundreds of messages between her and someone saved as work project. They weren't talking about spreadsheets or client meetings. They were planning my financial ruin. Once the divorce is finalized, we'll have the house, half his savings, and the monthly payments. One message read, "He'll never recover." I scrolled further and felt the floor drop from beneath me. He still has no idea about her. 10 years raising someone else's child. What a fool. Our daughter, my little girl. The one who had my eyes, or so everyone said. The one I'd taught to ride a bike, helped with math homework, and comforted after nightmares. Could she really not be mine? I carefully replaced the phone and spent the rest of the night staring at the ceiling, my mind racing through every memory, looking for clues I might have missed. By morning, instead of confronting her with blind rage, I had formulated a plan. "You're up early," she said, entering the kitchen with that fake smile I now recognized all too well. "Big presentation today," I lied, matching her falseness with my own. "Might be home late." "Take your time," she replied a little too quickly. "I've got that dinner with colleagues tonight anyway." Colleagues, right. As she kissed me goodbye, a peck so devoid of feeling it might as well have been a business handshake, I made my decision. I wouldn't confront her yet. Not until I knew the truth about everything, especially about my daughter. That afternoon, I didn't go back to work. Instead, I visited a private DNA testing facility. The weight of betrayal hung heavy on my shoulders as I explained what I needed. The technician's eyes held no judgment, only practiced professionalism as she handed me the kit and instructions. "Results in 3 days," she said. "Faster if you pay the expedition fee." I paid it without hesitation. Some things you just need to know, no matter the cost. As I drove home, a strange calm settled over me. Whatever came next, whether my world was about to completely shatter or merely crack, I would face it standing tall. Little did my wife know that her champagne toast to my destruction was premature, very premature indeed. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 5 years. My boss was concerned. I'd never missed a day, but I convinced him it was just a 24-hour bug. In reality, I needed to gather more evidence before the DNA results arrived. While my wife thought I was stuck in meetings all day, I parked 3 blocks from our house, hiding behind tinted windows and a baseball cap. At 10:15 a.m., right on schedule, a black sedan pulled into our driveway. The man who stepped out was tall, well-dressed, and smiling like he owned the place. In a way, maybe he already did. He didn't even look around before using a key to my house, to let himself in. My knuckles turned white on the steering wheel, but I forced myself to stay put. Confronting them now would only give away my advantage. Instead, I took photos, noted times, and started recording everything. If this was heading toward divorce, I needed all the evidence I could get. 2 hours later, they emerged together, laughing. She was wearing a dress I'd never seen before. They kissed in broad daylight before driving away in separate cars. I followed at a safe distance as they headed to an upscale restaurant downtown. Through the window, I watched them toast with wine, their hands intertwined across the table. I took more pictures, each one fueling the ice-cold determination growing inside me. After lunch, they visited a real estate office. I couldn't hear what they discussed, but the agent showed them brochures of luxury properties. Properties I could never afford on my salary alone. They were already planning their new life together, probably funded by my years of hard work and savings. When they finally parted ways at 3 p.m., I followed him instead of her. He drove to a law office specializing in high-asset divorces. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. They weren't just having an affair, they were strategically dismantling my life. That evening, I returned home before her, acting completely normal when she arrived with a fabricated story about her productive day at the office. I nodded, smiled, and asked all the right questions while my phone quietly recorded every lie. "How's our daughter doing at her sleepover?" I asked casually over dinner. "She's fine. Texted me earlier that they're having fun," she replied, not even looking up from her phone. I nodded, fighting to keep my expression neutral. The sleepover was real. I had confirmed it with the other parents, but her casual dismissal of our child struck me hard. Had she always been this way, or had I just never noticed? After dinner, she announced she needed to finish some work and disappeared into her home office. I waited 30 minutes before silently approaching the door, listening to her hushed phone conversation. "The lawyer says with his income, we can push for significant support payments," she whispered. "And yes, the house too. He has no idea about any of it." There was a pause. "No, don't worry about the kid. He's so attached to her. He'll take whatever visitation scraps we offer just to see her. It's our best leverage." Another pause. "The DNA? Don't be ridiculous. After all these years, he'd never think to check. Some men just see what they want to see." I backed away silently, a strange numbness spreading through me. In just 48 hours, my entire reality had been rewritten. The woman I'd built a life with was a stranger, coldly calculating the most efficient way to destroy me. But she'd made one critical miscalculation. The DNA test results would be ready tomorrow, and whatever truth they revealed would determine my next move. As I lay awake that night, listening to her peaceful breathing beside me, I realized that knowledge truly is power. And soon, very soon, the power would shift. The email notification came during a meeting I couldn't escape. "Your results are ready," it said simply. My finger hovered over the link, but I closed my phone. This wasn't something to rush through between PowerPoint slides. This was the moment that would either destroy or redefine my entire life. "You seem distracted today," my colleague mentioned as we gathered our materials after the presentation. "Just tired," I replied with a forced smile. "Everything good at home?" The irony of her question almost made me laugh. Instead, I nodded and made my excuses, practically running to my car. Finding a quiet spot in the parking garage, I finally opened the email, my heart thundering in my chest. The medical jargon swam before my eyes, but one sentence stood out with crystal clarity. Probability of paternity, 0%. I read it again and again. The words didn't change. The child I had raised for 10 years. The little girl who called me daddy, who I taught to swim, whose nightmares I'd soothed away, wasn't mine. Not biologically. Yet strangely, instead of added heartbreak, I felt a surge of cold clarity. Now I knew exactly what I was fighting for. Biology be damned. She was still my daughter in every way that mattered, and I would not let her become collateral damage in my wife's schemes. When I returned home that evening, I found them together in our living room, my wife and her lover, looking through what appeared to be financial documents. They jumped apart when I entered, faces contorting into masks of surprise and false welcome. "You're home early," my wife stammered, hastily gathering papers. Meeting ended sooner than expected, I replied calmly, noticing how her lover, a man I now recognized as one of her work colleagues, who had been to our house for dinner parties, stood awkwardly by the fireplace. "I don't believe we've been properly introduced," I said, extending my hand. "At least not in your real capacity." The silence that followed was deafening. My wife's face drained of color. "I was just dropping off some work files," the man finally said, taking my hand with a limp grip. "I was actually leaving." "Of course," I smiled, the kind of smile that didn't reach my eyes. Work files are so important these days. After he left, my wife launched into an elaborate explanation about project deadlines and emergency consultations. I listened quietly, marveling at how easily the lies flowed from her lips after all these years. "Where's our daughter?" I asked, deliberately emphasizing the word our. "Still at school." "Chess club today," she replied, visibly relieved at the change of subject. I nodded, fighting the urge to confront her with what I knew. Not yet. The timing wasn't right. Later that night, after checking on my sleeping daughter, studying her face for features I might have missed before, I overheard my wife on the phone in our bathroom. He almost caught us. "We need to accelerate everything," she whispered urgently. "File the papers this week. Once the shock hits him, he'll be too devastated to think clearly, and we can push for maximum settlement." A pause. "No, we don't tell her anything yet. Let him think everything's normal until the very last minute. The more blindsided he is, the better our position. Another pause. Yes, I've already moved most of our savings. He hasn't noticed yet. She laughed softly. After the toast at the dinner party this weekend, I'll tell him everything. It'll be the perfect setting. He won't make a scene in front of all our friends. So that was their timeline, a public humiliation followed by financial ruin. The dinner party was supposed to be celebrating my promotion, the one that would finally push our household into a higher tax bracket. Instead, it would be my execution. I silently returned to bed, my mind racing. The dinner party was 3 days away. 3 days to prepare my counterattack. 3 days to ensure that when glasses were raised for a toast that night, the one left speechless wouldn't be me. As my wife slipped into bed beside me, I pretended to be asleep, keeping my breathing even while my heart raced with adrenaline. For the first time in this nightmare, I felt something like anticipation. The tables were about to turn, and I would be the one controlling the narrative. Morning arrived with a strange sense of purpose. While my wife slept, I slipped out of bed and checked our joint accounts on my phone. Just as I suspected, our savings had been systematically drained over the past few weeks. Nearly $50,000 gone, transferred to an account I didn't recognize. She'd left just enough to avoid immediate suspicion, but not enough for me to survive the coming storm she was planning. I took screenshots of everything, documenting the financial betrayal with the same methodical precision I applied to my work. Then I made a call to my personal banker, one my wife didn't know about. I need to secure my assets immediately, I explained quietly from the garage, and I need absolute discretion. 2 hours later, I had opened a new account at a different bank and transferred my latest bonus, money she didn't yet know about. Safely out of her reach. It wasn't much compared to what she'd taken, but it was something, a financial lifeline for whatever came next. At work, I requested an urgent meeting with HR to discuss my benefits, particularly those concerning my daughter. The HR director seemed confused by my sudden interest in the legal details of my dependent coverage. Just being thorough, I explained with a smile that felt foreign on my face. Family planning, you know. I spent my lunch break with a divorce attorney, laying out everything I had discovered. Her expression remained professional, but her eyes widened slightly at the evidence I presented. The DNA test changes things, she said, reviewing the results. But since you've been the father figure from birth and your name is on the birth certificate, you still have parental rights. The financial maneuvers your wife has made, those are more concerning from a legal standpoint. She looked up at me, her expression softening slightly. What do you want from this? My daughter, I answered without hesitation, and justice. That evening, I picked up my daughter from school. Something I rarely did due to my work schedule. Her face lit up when she saw me waiting. Daddy, what are you doing here? She exclaimed, throwing her arms around me. Thought we could use some ice cream and park time, I replied, holding her a bit tighter than usual. As we sat on a bench watching other children play, I studied her features. Maybe her nose wasn't quite like mine. Maybe her smile had always belonged to someone else. But the way she laughed at my jokes, the way she scrunched her face when thinking hard about a question, those were things we'd built together. No DNA test could take that away. Are you sad, Daddy? She asked suddenly, her intuition sharp as always. Not when I'm with you, I answered truthfully. You know I love you more than anything in the world, right? She nodded, already distracted by a dog running nearby, but I needed to say it, needed her to hear it before everything exploded. That night, I overheard my wife confirming final details for the dinner party, 20 guests, including her lover and his wife. A twist I hadn't anticipated. The poor woman was as clueless as I had been. We'll make the announcement after the main course, my wife whispered into her phone. His face when I tell everyone I'm leaving him, priceless. I nearly revealed myself then, almost stepped into the room to confront her. But the attorney's words echoed in my mind, documentation, preparation, strategy. Emotional outbursts would only weaken my position. Instead, I quietly confirmed my own plans for the dinner party. The catering was set, the champagne, the expensive kind my wife preferred, would be delivered tomorrow, and I had arranged for one special addition to the evening's program. As I lay in bed that night pretending to sleep while my wife scrolled through her phone beside me, I went over my plan again. The DNA results were securely stored in my email. The financial records were backed up in 3 different places. The modified toast I had prepared was memorized. My wife had spent weeks planning my destruction. She'd choreographed every detail of my humiliation with the precision of a military campaign. But she'd forgotten one critical detail. I'd always been better at strategy than she was. The dinner party was tomorrow night. In less than 24 hours, glasses would be raised, announcements would be made, and someone's world would come crashing down. It just wouldn't be mine. The day of the dinner party unfolded with excruciating slowness. Every moment felt like a performance. Me playing the role of unsuspecting husband while my wife pretended to be the beautiful hostess preparing for a celebration. "I've set up the dining room," she announced, looking particularly radiant in a new dress I'd never seen before. "The caterers arrive at 6. "Everything looks perfect," I replied, admiring her handiwork while silently noting how she'd positioned herself. At the head of the table, traditionally my spot, a small power move foreshadowing the evening ahead. I excused myself mid-afternoon, claiming I needed to pick up my suit from the dry cleaners. Instead, I drove to meet the private investigator who had been following my wife's lover for the past 48 hours. "It's all here," he said, sliding a manila envelope across the cafe table. "Financial records, text messages, hotel receipts, and something interesting you didn't ask for. Apparently he's done this before. 2 previous marriages, both ended the same way." I thumbed through the documents, a grim satisfaction settling over me. "And the other matter is taken care of. Your presentation is ready to go. Just press this button when you're ready." He handed me a small remote. "It'll display on any connected screen in your house." Back home, I spent an hour with my daughter before my in-laws picked her up for their planned overnight visit. Another convenient arrangement in my wife's master plan. No child present to witness the impending destruction of their family. "Be good for Grandma and Grandpa," I told her, hugging her tightly. "I'll see you tomorrow, and we'll do something special. Just us. Promise?" she asked, her innocent eyes locked on mine. "I promise. Some promises transcend biology." This was one of them. As 6 o'clock approached, I prepared myself mentally. The caterers arrived, transforming our dining room with elegant place settings and ambient lighting. The champagne was chilling. The hidden cameras I'd installed, strictly legal in my own home, were recording. Everything was in place. Guests began arriving at 7. Colleagues, friends, my wife's lover, and his unsuspecting wife, all dressed for what they thought was a celebration of my promotion. I greeted each with practiced enthusiasm, playing my role perfectly. My wife worked the room with practiced charm, occasionally exchanging meaningful glances with her lover across the crowded space. I caught him checking his watch several times, anticipating the moment when their plan would unfold. Dinner was served at 8, a lavish multi-course meal that my wife had planned with meticulous attention to detail. The conversation flowed, punctuated by laughter and clinking glasses. To anyone watching, it would have appeared to be the perfect evening. As the main course plates were cleared, my wife caught my eye and smiled. Not the warm smile of a loving partner, but the predatory smile of someone about to strike. This was it, the moment she had been planning for weeks. She gracefully rose to her feet, champagne glass in hand. "Before dessert is served, I'd like to propose a toast." The room quieted, all eyes turned toward her. Her lover straightened in his chair, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. His wife looked on adoringly, completely unaware of what was about to happen. "We've gathered here tonight supposedly to celebrate my husband's promotion," my wife began, her voice carrying across the silent room. "But actually, I have a different announcement to make." She paused, clearly savoring the moment. "After much consideration, I've decided to—" "Actually," I interrupted, standing up with my own glass in hand. "If you don't mind, I'd like to say something first." Confusion flickered across her face. This wasn't in her script, but surrounded by guests, she had no choice but to yield the floor with a tight smile. "First, I want to thank everyone for coming tonight," I began, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "It means so much to have all of our closest friends here to witness this important moment." I raised my glass higher. "I'd like to propose a toast to truth, to loyalty, and to the power of DNA testing." The room went completely still. My wife's face drained of color as I reached for the remote in my pocket. "I think it's time we all saw what a decade of lies looks like," I said, pressing the button. "Don't worry, dear. I've prepared a very special presentation just for you." The large TV on our dining room wall flickered to life, displaying a simple slideshow title, "A Decade of Deception." My wife lunged toward me, but it was too late. The remote was already activated and the presentation began to play. First came the bank statements. methodically organized to show the systematic draining of our accounts over the past months, timestamps, transaction numbers, everything meticulously documented. Gasps echoed around the table as six-figure sums appeared on screen, transferred to unknown accounts. "This is ridiculous," my wife sputtered, her composure cracking. "This is private." "Oh, we're just getting started," I replied calmly, clicking to the next slide. "Everyone, please enjoy your champagne. The show is just beginning." Next came screenshots of text messages between my wife and her lover. Not the explicit ones, I had too much class for that, but the ones detailing their plans, their strategy to blindside me with divorce papers, their calculations of how much they could legally extract from me, their timeline for moving in together after my financial destruction was complete. Her lover stood abruptly. "This is outrageous. I'm leaving." "Sit down," I said quietly, my voice carrying a steel edge that few had ever heard. "Your wife deserves to hear this too, don't you think?" His wife was staring at him, tears streaming down her face as comprehension dawned. One marriage was already unraveling before our guest's eyes. I clicked to the next slide, the DNA test results enlarged so everyone could clearly read the 0% probability of paternity. 10 years, I said, my voice finally betraying a hint of emotion. 10 years raising a child I've loved with every fiber of my being, only to discover she isn't biologically mine. The room was so silent you could hear the ice melting in the champagne glasses. My wife had gone completely pale, frozen in place as her carefully constructed world imploded. "But here's where your plan failed," I continued, turning to face her directly. "You assumed that once I knew the truth, I would walk away. That DNA would matter more than love. That's where you fundamentally misunderstood what it means to be a parent." I clicked to the final slide, legal documents I'd filed the previous day. "These are custody papers citing abandonment and financial malfeasance. My lawyer filed them this morning. I'm not walking away from my daughter, biology be damned. She's mine in every way that matters." I turned to address the stunned dinner guests. "I apologize for the unconventional entertainment this evening. To those who came genuinely to celebrate my promotion, thank you. The rest of you were brought here to witness something else entirely, just not the scene my wife had planned." My wife finally found her voice. "You can't do this. You have no right." "Actually, I have every right," I interrupted. "The courts favor the parent who has been present and stable. Your documented plan to use our daughter as leverage against me, your financial misconduct, the multiple properties you've been viewing with your friend here, all submitted as evidence this morning." I raised my glass one final time. "So yes, let's toast. To new beginnings, to justice, and to the family I will continue to protect, even if it's smaller than I once thought." The aftermath was chaos, exactly as I had anticipated. Her lover's wife threw her drink in his face before storming out. Several guests made awkward excuses and quickly departed. My wife alternated between rage and desperate bargaining as her carefully constructed exit strategy crumbled before her eyes. By midnight, the house had emptied. My wife had left, screaming threats about lawyers and retribution. I sat alone in the wreckage of the dinner party, emotionally exhausted but curiously at peace. My phone buzzed with a text from my in-laws, checking if the party went well and sending a picture of my daughter peacefully sleeping. Despite everything, I smiled. Tomorrow would bring legal battles and difficult conversations. But tonight, I had reclaimed my dignity and my future. I walked through the quiet house, turning off lights and straightening chairs. In the dining room, a half-empty champagne glass, my wife's, still sat at her abandoned place setting. I picked it up, considered its contents for a moment, then poured it down the drain, rinsed the glass and put it away. Some chapters needed to close completely before new ones could begin. As I finally headed upstairs to bed, my phone buzzed again. A message from my attorney confirming our court date for temporary custody arrangements. "We're in a strong position," the text read. "Get some rest." For the first time in weeks, I would. 6 months later, I stood outside the courthouse, sunlight warming my face as my attorney shook my hand firmly. "Congratulations," she said, a rare smile breaking through her typically professional demeanor. "Primary custody with generous financial support. It's not often we see an outcome this favorable for the non-biological father." The journey to this moment had been grueling: weekly court appearances, character witnesses, financial forensic investigations that uncovered even more deception than I'd initially discovered. My wife had fought viciously, using every tactic to paint me as unstable and unfit. but the evidence spoke for itself. The judge was particularly impressed by your daughter's testimony, my attorney continued as we walked down the courthouse steps. When a 10-year-old articulates that clearly who she considers her real parent to be, it's powerful. That moment in the judge's chambers had been the turning point. My daughter, nervous but determined, explaining in her own words why she wanted to stay with me. "He's my dad," she'd said simply. "He's always been there. He helps me with homework and knows how I like my sandwiches cut and comes to every single soccer game. That's what dads do." Biology didn't matter to her. Love did. My ex-wife received visitation rights, of course, but her plans of using our daughter as leverage had backfired spectacularly. The financial settlement was another shock to her system. The judge had tracked the money she'd siphoned and ordered most of it returned. Her lover had disappeared early in the proceedings, unwilling to face the legal scrutiny or the financial consequences. "What about the house?" I asked my attorney as we reached the parking lot. "All yours," she confirmed. "Though I understand you're selling." I nodded. Too many memories there, both good and bad. We'd already found a new place, smaller but closer to my daughter's school, with a backyard perfect for the puppy she'd been asking for. As I drove to pick her up from school, I reflected on how differently things had turned out from what my ex-wife had planned. Instead of being financially ruined and separated from my daughter, I had emerged stronger, with our bond more secure than ever. My daughter was waiting on the school steps, chatting with friends. When she spotted my car, she waved goodbye to them and ran over, tossing her backpack in before climbing into the passenger seat. "How was your day?" I asked, our familiar after-school ritual unchanged despite everything else that had transformed in our lives. "Good. I got an A on my science project," she beamed, buckling her seatbelt. "Did you go to court today?" "Yes," I nodded, pulling away from the curb. "And I have good news. The judge made the final decision. You're going to stay living with me, and we're moving into the new house next month." Her face lit up. "And the puppy?" I laughed. "Some priorities never change. Yes. And the puppy." As we drove home, she chattered about school and friends, unfazed by the legal battle that had finally concluded. Children are remarkably resilient when they feel secure in their parents' love. That evening, after homework and dinner, we sat on the porch swing watching the sunset, a quiet tradition we'd established in the weeks after the dinner to party chaos. These moments had become our time to talk about the hard things, to answer questions, to heal. "Dad," she asked, kicking her feet gently to keep the swing moving, "are you still sad about the DNA thing?" I considered my answer carefully. We'd had age-appropriate conversations about what the test meant, but children understand more than adults often give them credit for. "I was sad at first," I admitted, "not because it changed how I feel about you, but because I was lied to for a long time." She nodded thoughtfully. "But you're still my real dad, right? Even without the DNA matching?" I put my arm around her shoulders. "Absolutely. Being a dad isn't about DNA. It's about who shows up, who loves you, who puts in the time and care and effort. That's always been me, and it always will be." She leaned against me, satisfied with the answer. Later, after she'd gone to bed, I sat in the quiet living room with a sense of completion I hadn't felt since this ordeal began. The custody papers were signed, the new house was purchased, the divorce was finalized. My phone buzzed with a message from a colleague asking if I was ready to rejoin the dating world. I smiled but didn't respond. That would come eventually, but not yet. For now, I was focused on building our new life, just my daughter and me. The DNA test that was meant to devastate me had instead given me something unexpected, clarity about what truly matters in being a parent. Not genetics, not biology, just love, consistency, and showing up every day. My ex-wife had unwittingly given me the greatest gift of all, the chance to prove to myself and to the world that fatherhood transcends blood. And in that knowledge, I had found a peace that no deception could ever take away. Our story has come to an end. If you've made it this far, how about subscribing to our channel? It helps us immensely. I've selected 2 other videos for you that I'm sure you'll enjoy. Feel free to click on them. I'll be waiting for you in the next story. See you soon.